Make yourself comfortable, close your eyes, and let yourself be carried away by a story from the Middle Ages. Welcome to our channel. Tonight, we travel back in time. You step softly across the threshold of the Scriptorium, your leather-soled shoes making a faint, rhythmic thud against the cool, uneven surface of the flagstone floor. The air inside is thick with the comforting, heavy scent of aged parchment, beeswax candles, and the sharp, metallic tang of iron gall ink. It is a space of profound stillness, where the only movement is the slow, steady flicker of amber flames dancing in the draft from a high, arched window. You move toward your accustomed desk, a heavy oak lectern smoothed by the touch of many hands over many decades. And as you settle onto your wooden stool, you feel the familiar, grounding weight of your responsibilities settling over your shoulders like a warm wool cloak. Outside, the autumn rain begins to fall with a soft, persistent patter against the slate roof, a gentle percussion that reinforces the profound sense of sanctuary within these thick stone walls. You are safe and warm, and the world beyond the monastery is a distant, blurred memory of gray mist and damp earth. Before you lies the manuscript, its vellum pages cream-colored and supple, waiting for the touch of your quill. You spend several long, unhurried minutes simply preparing your workspace, a ritual that brings a deep sense of order to your mind. You arrange your pumice stone, your straightedge, and your collection of goose feather quills, each one trimmed to a precise, sharp point. You reach for the inkwell, a small horn vessel nestled in a carved hole in the desk, and you stir the dark, viscous liquid with a sliver of wood, watching the way the light catches the swirling depths of the ink. The room is filled with the soft, collective breathing of your fellow scribes, a dozen men lost in the same meditative trance of labor, their heads bowed low over their desks. The only other sound is the occasional, dry rasp of a page being turned, a sound like a winter leaf skittering across a stone path, followed by the long, comfortable silence that defines the evening hours. You dip your quill into the ink, feeling the slight resistance as the nib draws up the fluid, and you bring it to the parchment. Your first stroke is a long, vertical line, the beginning of a capital letter that will eventually be adorned with gold leaf and vibrant lapis lazuli. As the nib touches the vellum, you hear the microscopic scratch of the feather, a tiny, crisp sound that seems to fill the quiet room. You work with a glacial slowness, focusing entirely on the pressure of your fingers and the steady flow of the ink. There is no rush, for time in the monastery is measured not by minutes, but by the slow progression of the sun across the cloisters and the rhythmic tolling of the bells. You watch as the ink sits wet and glistening on the surface of the page, a deep midnight black that slowly loses its sheen as it is absorbed into the animal skin. The smell of the ink, earthy and permanent, rises to meet you, mixing with the faint, sweet aroma of the honey-thickened paints used by the illuminator at the neighboring desk. As the evening deepens, the light from the high windows fades from a pale gray to a deep, bruised purple, and the candles are replaced with fresh tapers. You watch the wick of a new candle catch fire, the flame growing from a tiny blue spark into a tall, steady golden spire that casts long, wavering shadows across the stone walls. The warmth of the flame brushes against your cheek, a soft contrast to the cool air that circulates near the floor. You turn your attention to a section of the page that requires the application of gold leaf. You pick up a tiny, translucent sheet of gold with a wooden pincer, the metal so thin it flutters with even the slightest movement of your breath. You breathe a warm, moist sigh onto the parchment to activate the fish glue adhesive, a gentle huff of air that is the only sound you make. You carefully lay the gold down, watching as it clings to the page, reflecting the candlelight with a dull, ancient glow that seems to hold the warmth of the sun within the dark stone room. The rain outside intensifies, shifting from a light patter to a steady, drumming roar that muffles all other sounds. It creates a cocoon of white noise, a rhythmic washing away of the outside world that leaves you alone with your work and your thoughts. You use a smooth dog-esque tooth to burnish the gold, rubbing it in small, circular motions until the matte surface becomes a bright, polished mirror. The repetitive motion is hypnotic, a physical prayer that requires nothing but your presence and your patience. You feel the smoothness of the tooth against the gold, the slight vibration traveling up your arm, and the cooling of the stone floor against your feet. The world is quiet, and in this moment, there is no past and no future, only the steady pressure of the burnisher and the golden light dancing on the vellum. In the distance, the first notes of the evening chant begin to drift through the heavy oak doors of the chapel, winding their way through the stone corridors like a ribbon of smoke. The Gregorian chant is a low, resonant drone, a tapestry of voices that rises and falls with the natural rhythm of breath. The sound is muffled by the thickness of the walls, reaching you as a vibration in the air rather than a distinct melody. It anchors you to the earth, a sound that has echoed through these halls for centuries and will continue long after your quill has been laid down for the last time. You pause in your work, your quill hovering above the inkwell, and simply listen. The rain on the roof, the crackle of the candles, and the distant, holy drone of the monks create a symphony of peace that settles deep into your bones. You begin the process of closing your station for the night. You carefully wipe the nib of your quill with a scrap of linen, removing every trace of ink until the feather is clean and white again. You replace the stopper in your inkwell, feeling the snug fit of the wood against the horn. You close the heavy leather cover of the manuscript, the sound a soft, muffled thump that signals the end of the day's labor. You stand up slowly, your joints stiff from hours of concentration, and you feel the blood returning to your legs as you stretch in the dim light. The scriptorium is nearly dark now, the other scribes already moving toward the door like ghosts in the shadows. You blow out your candle, watching the thin trail of white smoke curl upward into the rafters, the scent of charred wick lingering in the air. You walk through the long, vaulted cloisters toward your cell, your footsteps echoing in the vast, empty spaces of the monastery. The air here is cooler and smells of damp stone and the wet earth of the inner garden. The rain continues to fall, dripping from the stone gargoyles into the courtyards below with a heavy, rhythmic splashing. You reach your cell, a small, austere room with a single window and a simple bed of straw covered in coarse wool blankets. You lie down, the straw rustling beneath you with a dry, papery sound that reminds you of the parchment you spent the day transforming. You pull the heavy wool blanket up to your chin, feeling its scratchy warmth against your skin. The distant chanting has ceased, replaced by the absolute silence of the stone monastery, broken only by the steady, lulling rhythm of the rain on the slate tiles above. You close your eyes, the image of golden letters and black ink still etched behind your eyelids, and you allow the peaceful weight of the night to pull you down into a deep, dreamless sleep. The world is quiet, and you are safe and warm. The rain has been falling since Sext, and you have been watching it through the narrow window of the Scriptorium for hours now. Though watching is perhaps too active a word for the way your eyes rest upon the wavering streams of water that trace their patient paths down the thick glass. The world beyond the monastery walls has dissolved into soft grays and deeper grays, the autumn landscape becoming nothing more than a watercolor suggestion of hills and trees, all edges blurred, all urgency washed away. Here, inside these ancient stone walls, you are safe and warm, separated from the weather by 3 feet of solid masonry that has stood for 200 years and will stand for 200 more. Your desk is positioned near the window to catch the last of the afternoon light, though that light has been failing for some time now, filtered through clouds and rain until it arrives at your workspace as barely more than a whisper of illumination. You have already lit your candle, a thick tallow cylinder that sits in its iron holder to your left, its flame steady and unwavering in the still air of the Scriptorium. The scent of burning tallow mingles with the deeper, richer smell of the vellum stretched before you, a smell like earth and time, like something ancient and patient. Your inkwell sits open, the black liquid inside perfectly still, reflecting the candlelight as a single point of amber that does not waver. You dip your quill into the ink with the same motion you have performed 10,000 times before, feeling the slight resistance as the cut tip breaks the surface tension, watching the black liquid climb the shaft through some mysterious property that you have never questioned and do not question now. The excess ink drips back into the well, 1 drop, 2 drops, 3 drops, each one creating tiny ripples that spread outward and fade and leave the surface still once more. The world is quiet. The world is safe and warm. The manuscript before you is a psalter, and you have been copying Psalm 127 for the better part of the afternoon. Your letters forming in the careful textualis script that Brother Benedict taught you when you first came to this monastery 7 years ago. Each letter must be precise, each stroke deliberate, the vertical lines perfectly parallel, the curves matching exactly the exemplar that lies open on the slanted desk beside your workspace. You form the letters one at a time. Nisi dominus edificaverit domum. Unless the Lord builds the house. The Latin flows from your quill in black lines on cream vellum, and you do not think about the meaning, only about the shapes, the spaces between letters, the rhythm of the words as they appear beneath your hand. Brother Thomas sits 3 desks away, his head bent over his own work, copying from a book of hours that will eventually travel to some noble household you will never see, in some city whose name you may never learn. You can hear the soft scratch of his quill, a sound like a mouse in straw, regular and peaceful, punctuated by the occasional pause as he dips his pen or consults his exemplar. Brother William is somewhere behind you, though you cannot see him without turning, and you do not turn. You know he is there by the sound of his breathing, slow and steady, and by the faint rustle of pages when he reaches the bottom of a leaf and must carefully lift it to continue on the reverse. The rain continues its patient work against the windows, against the slate roof high above, against the cobblestones of the cloister far below. You can hear it in layers, the soft patter on glass, the deeper drumming on slate, the gurgle of water moving through the lead gutters and down the iron chains into the collection barrels in the courtyard. Somewhere in the church, the monks are beginning Vespers, their voices rising in a chant that reaches you as barely more than a vibration in the stone, a distant murmur of devotion that requires nothing from you but awareness that it exists, that it continues, that it will continue tomorrow, and the day after and the day after that. The world is quiet. The world is safe and warm. You complete the final line of the psalm and set down your quill to examine your work. The letters are good, uniform, and clear, though you notice a slight irregularity in one of the ascenders that displeases you, a barely perceptible lean to the left that no one else would likely notice, but that you will see every time you look at this page for as long as it exists. You accept this imperfection as you have accepted all the others, as you have learned to accept the limitations of your hand, your eye, your concentration. Tomorrow you will begin the illumination, mixing the gold leaf with glare, preparing the gesso ground. But that is tomorrow's work, not today's. The light from the window has faded to almost nothing now, and your candle has burned down perhaps an inch, the flame still steady, still patient. Brother Benedict rises from his desk near the far wall, his joints creaking softly as he straightens, and this is the signal that the day's work is ending. You clean your quill carefully, wiping the nib with a scrap of linen, checking that no dried ink remains to spoil tomorrow's letters. You cap your inkwell, its cork stopper fitting snugly into place with a soft sound like satisfaction. The vellum you leave where it lies, weighted at the corners with smooth river stones that have served this purpose for longer than you have been alive. The walk to your cell takes you through the cloister, where the rain falls into the central garth and the covered walkway keeps you dry. Your footsteps echo softly on the stone flags, a sound you have heard so many times it has become part of the silence rather than a break from it. Your cell waits for you as it always waits, small and plain and yours, with its narrow bed and wool blanket, its tiny window that looks out onto the night, and the rain and the darkness that holds no threat, only peace. You lie down without ceremony, pulling the blanket to your chin, feeling its weight and warmth settle over you like a blessing. Through the walls, through the stone and timber and slate, you can still hear the rain, steady and eternal, and beneath it, or perhaps within it, the distant voices of the monks at their prayers, singing the old songs in the old way, as they have always sung them, as they will always sing. The world is quiet. The world is safe and warm. Your eyes close. The darkness is complete and gentle, and you drift into it like a leaf on water, slowly, slowly, until there is nothing left but sleep. You settle onto the wooden stool, its seat worn smooth by generations of patient scribes. Your desk is a solid slab of oak, its surface a landscape of gentle dips and ink stains, a testament to quiet centuries of work. Before you lies the page, a rectangle of creamy parchment that smells faintly of ash and lye, a scent of clean, prepared skin. The rain outside is a soft, constant shushing against the thick, leaded glass of the arched window, a sound that seems to deepen the silence within the scriptorium rather than break it. The world is quiet, safe and warm behind these stone walls. You dip the quill, a goose feather worn to a perfect, familiar curve against your finger, into the small clay inkwell. The ink is a deep, glossy black, made from oak galls and iron salts, and it clings to the nib in a heavy droplet. You let the excess drip back, a single dark tear falling silently into the well. You bring the nib to the parchment, the point hovering just above the last completed line of text, a row of neat, black Carolingian minuscule that seems to hum with a quiet order. The first touch is always a slight resistance, a faint scratch that gives way to a smooth, whispering pull as you draw the letter D. The sound is dry and papery, a soft, rhythmic scratch-scratch that joins the chorus of a dozen other quills in the room, a peaceful symphony of diligent sound. Your hand moves with a slow, practiced certainty. Each letter is built from a series of deliberate, separate strokes. The vertical stem of the H is drawn with a steady, downward pressure, your breath held slightly. Then the gentle curve of the shoulder, a lighter touch that barely whispers against the surface. The ink dries almost instantly, leaving a crisp, slightly raised line you can feel with the very edge of your thumb as you gently steady the page. page. The smell of the ink is sharp and mineral, mixing with the older, deeper aromas of the room. The beeswax used to polish the desks, the faint, sweet dust of the vellum in the great codices on the shelves, the earthy scent of the stone itself, cool and damp from the autumn air. You are aware of the weight of your own woolen robe, its rough texture a constant, gentle pressure on your shoulders and arms, a familiar anchor. The illumination awaits at the margina simple vine, a space left blank for a touch of color. You set the quill aside and take up a finer brush, its handle smooth from use. You select a small dish of pigment, ground malachite mixed with egg white, a luminous green the color of deep forest moss. The process of applying it is slow, almost meditative. You load the very tip of the brush, then begin to lay down a thin, careful line that curls and twists like a tendril seeking sunlight. The paint goes on opaque and matte, a stark, beautiful contrast to the black text. You rinse the brush in a cup of clear water, watching the green cloud and then dissipate, a slow, swirling dance. The only sounds are the gentle rain, the scratch of quills, and the soft, wet tap of your brush against the rim of the ceramic dish. As the evening deepens, the candle at your elbow becomes the sun of your small world. Its flame is a steady, golden teardrop, its light pooling in the curve of the inkwell and glinting off the edge of your knife, used for smoothing the parchment. The tallow gives off a warm, slightly greasy smell, a comforting, homely scent that mingles with the others. Your eyes grow heavy watching the play of light on the gold leaf you applied earlier to an initial A. It does not shine, but holds the light in a deep, liquid glow, a captured piece of the candle S heart. The stone of the walls, visible in the arches of the windows and the great fireplace now cold, seems to absorb sound and worry, holding the room in a perfect, tranquil equilibrium. The world is quiet. One by one, the other scribes finish their lines, clean their tools, and rise with soft sighs. Their footsteps are muted thumps on the rush-strewn floor, receding into the shadowy corridor. You complete the final word of a song, a long, flowing amen that trails off into a perfectly measured dot. You sand the page with a fine pumice stone, a soft, grating hiss that smooths the surface. You blow away the dust, a faint, chalky cloud caught in the candlelight. The task is done. The book is closed, its heavy wooden cover and brass clasp giving a soft, solid thump that feels like a period at the end of a very long, very calm sentence. You snuff your candle between dampened fingers, a brief sizzle, and a curl of smoke that smells sharply of extinction. The darkness that rushes in is not total. From the high, narrow windows, a diffuse, gray twilight seeps, just enough to see the outlines of the desks and bookshelves. You walk slowly to the door, your own footsteps now the only ones, echoing softly in the vast, empty hall. The scent of the scriptorium ink, parchment, stone, wax fades behind you, replaced by the cooler, cleaner air of the cloister walk, touched with the petrichor of rain on the courtyard herbs. Your cell is a small, square space of profound simplicity. The walls are bare stone, the floor swept clean. A narrow pallet of straw, covered with a rough woolen blanket, waits along one wall. A small, unlit tallow candle sits in a niche. You do not light it. You remove your outer robe, the wool releasing the accumulated warmth of the day, and lie down. The straw rustles faintly beneath you, a dry, whispering sound. The blanket is heavy and slightly scratchy, a familiar weight. From the far end of the monastery, through layers of stone and night, the voices of the brothers singing Compline begin to drift. It is a Gregorian chant, a single, unwavering melodic line that rises and falls with the slow inevitability of breathing. The Latin words are indistinct at this distance, melted into pure, resonant sound, a deep hum that seems to vibrate in the very mortar between the stones. Against this, the rain continues its gentle patter on the slate roofs above, a steady, rhythmic percussion, droplet upon droplet, a soothing, endless repetition. The chant rises, a long, open vowel held until it fades into the silence. And in that silence, the rain remains, a constant, hushed whisper telling you that all is well, that the walls are thick, the night is long, and there is nothing to be done but rest. Your breathing begins to slow, to match the pace of the distant melody, to sync with the soft, irregular drip from the eaves outside your small, high window. The chill of the stone around you, the weight of the blanket upon you, the last faint scent of ink on your fingertips. These are the final sensations you note before the chant becomes a dream of sound, and the rain becomes the rhythm of your own slow, quiet heart, beating in the dark, safe and warm. You sit in the scriptorium, the heavy stone walls surrounding you like the embrace of an ancient, slumbering giant. The air is thick with the scent of parchment and ink, the faint aroma of beeswax from the candles that flicker and dance upon their wrought iron stands. The wooden desk before you is worn smooth by centuries of use, its surface cool beneath your forearms as you lean in, your quills scratching softly upon the parchment. The world is quiet, the only sounds the gentle rain tapping against the arched windows and the distant, echoing chants of the monks at their evening prayers. You are safe and warm, ensconced in the timeless sanctuary of the monastery, the stone floors cool beneath your feet, the candlelight casting long, dancing shadows upon the shelves of leather-bound books that line the walls. You dip your quill into the inkwells, the iron nib catching the thick, black liquid that glistens in the candlelight. You turn the page of the manuscript before you, the parchment rustling softly, the golden illumination of the previous page catching the light as it fades from view. The new page is blank, the surface smooth and unblemished, awaiting your careful, practiced hand. You begin to write, the quills scratching softly upon the parchment. The rhythmic sound a soothing counterpoint to the gentle rain and the distant chants. The letters flow from your hand, each stroke measured and deliberate, the words taking shape upon the page as if by magic. The candlelight flickers, the flame casting long, dancing shadows upon the stone walls. You lean in closer, your eyes tracing the lines of the manuscript before you, the golden illumination catching the light as you turn the page. The words blur before your eyes, the ink smudging slightly as your quill slips, the sound of the scratching stopping abruptly. You sit back, the wooden chair creaking softly beneath you, the candlelight flickering once more as you take a deep breath, the scent of parchment and ink filling your lungs. You reach for the sanding tool, the metal edge catching the light as you run it over the smudged ink, the grains of sand scraping away the mistake. The sound is soft, like the rustling of dry leaves upon the forest floor, the sensation tactile and oddly satisfying. You blow the sand away, the grains catching the light as they fall, the ink beneath now smooth and unblemished. You dip your quill once more, the nib catching the ink, and you continue to write, the scratching sound resuming its gentle rhythm. The rain continues to fall, the sound a steady, soothing soundtrack to your work. The distant chants have ceased, the monastery now quiet, the only sounds the gentle tapping of rain and the soft scratching of your quill. The candlelight flickers, the flame casting long, dancing shadows upon the stone walls, the golden illumination catching the light as you turn the page. The words blur once more, the ink smudging slightly as your quill slips, the sound of the scratching stopping abruptly. You sit back, the wooden chair creaking softly beneath you, the candlelight flickering once more as you take a deep breath, the scent of parchment and ink filling your lungs. You reach for the sanding tool, the metal edge catching the light as you run it over the smudged ink, the grains of sand scraping away the mistake. The sound is soft, like the rustling of dry leaves upon the forest floor, the sensation tactile and oddly satisfying. You blow the sand away, the grains catching the light as they fall, the ink beneath now smooth and unblemished. You dip your quill once more, the nib catching the ink, and you continue to write, the scratching sound resuming its gentle rhythm. The rain continues to fall, the sound a steady, soothing soundtrack to your work. The candlelight flickers, the flame casting long, dancing shadows upon the stone walls, the golden illumination catching the light as you turn the page. The words blur once more, the ink smudging slightly as your quill slips, the sound of the scratching stopping abruptly. You sit back, the wooden chair creaking softly beneath you, the candlelight flickering once more as you take a deep breath, the scent of parchment and ink filling your lungs. You reach for the sanding tool, the metal edge catching the light as you run it over the smudged ink, the grains of sand scraping away the mistake. The sound is soft, like the rustling of dry leaves upon the forest floor, the sensation tactile and oddly satisfying. You blow the sand away, the grains catching the light as they fall, the ink beneath now smooth and unblemished. You dip your quill once more, the nib catching the ink, and you continue to write, the scratching sound resuming its gentle rhythm. The rain continues to fall, the sound a steady, soothing soundtrack to your work. The candlelight flickers, the flame casting long, dancing shadows upon the stone walls, the golden illumination catching the light as you turn the page. The words blur once more, the ink smudging slightly as your quill slips, the sound of the scratching stopping abruptly. You sit back, the wooden chair creaking softly beneath you, the candlelight flickering once more as you take a deep breath, the scent of parchment and ink filling your lungs. The rain continues to fall, the sound a steady, soothing soundtrack to your work. The candlelight flickers, the flame casting long, dancing shadows upon the stone walls, the golden illumination catching the light as you turn the page. The words blur once more, the ink smudging slightly as your quill slips, the sound of the scratching stopping abruptly. You sit back, the wooden chair creaking softly beneath you, the candlelight flickering once more as you take a deep breath, the scent of parchment and ink filling your lungs. You reach for the sanding tool, the metal edge catching the light as you run it over the smudged ink, the grains of sand scraping away the mistake. The sound is soft, like the rustling of dry leaves upon the forest floor, the sensation tactile and oddly satisfying. You blow the sand away, the grains catching the light as they fall, the ink beneath now smooth and unblemished. You dip your quill once more, the nib catching the ink, and you continue to write, the scratching sound resuming its gentle rhythm. The rain continues to fall, the sound a steady, soothing soundtrack to your work. The candlelight flickers, the flame casting long, dancing shadows upon the stone walls, the golden illumination catching the light as you turn the page. The words blur once more, the ink smudging slightly as your quill slips, the sound of the scratching stopping abruptly. The candle burns low, the flame flickering weakly, the wax pool beneath it wide and shallow. You reach for the snuffer, the metal cold beneath your fingers, the sound of the rain and the distant chants filling the silence as you extinguish the flame. The scriptorium is plunged into darkness, the only light the faint glow of the embers in the hearth, the sound of the rain and the distant chants the only companions to your solitude. You rise from your chair, the wooden seat creaking softly beneath you, the stone floor cool beneath your feet. You stretch, your muscles aching from the long hours of work, the scent of parchment and ink filling your lungs as you take a deep breath. You gather your things, the sound of the parchment rustling softly, the weight of the inkwell heavy in your hand. You blow out the last of the candles, the scriptorium now dark and quiet, the only sounds the gentle rain and the distant chants. You make your way to your cell, The stone walls cool beneath your fingers as you navigate the dark corridors. The sound of your footsteps echoes softly. The distant chants a soothing lullaby as you walk. Your cell is small and simple, the stone walls bare, the only light the faint glow of the embers in the hearth. You sit upon your cot, the straw mattress rustling softly beneath you, the woolen blanket rough beneath your fingers. You close your eyes, the sound of the rain and the distant chants filling the silence. You take a deep breath, the scent of the woolen blanket and the straw mattress filling your lungs. You listen to the gentle rhythm of the rain. The distant chants a soothing lullaby as you drift off to sleep. The stone walls of the monastery safe and warm. The world is quiet. The only sounds the gentle rain and the distant chants. The only sensation the rough woolen blanket beneath your fingers. You are safe and warm, ensconced in the timeless sanctuary of the monastery. The stone walls cool beneath your feet, the candlelight casting long, dancing shadows upon the stone walls. The rain continues to fall, the sound a steady, soothing soundtrack to your slumber. The distant chants fade away, the monastery now quiet. The only sounds the gentle tapping of rain and the soft rustling of the straw mattress. You are safe and warm. The stone walls of the monastery are protective embrace as you drift off to sleep. The world quiet and still around you. You sit at your wide wooden desk beneath the high vaulted stone of the Scriptorium. Your shoulders eased under the simple wool habit, the air cool against your forearms, and you feel the steady damp of the autumn rain on the arched window panes outside as a low, constant percussion that makes the whole place seem like the inside of a safe shell, safe and warm. The world is quiet, your fingers tracing the worn groove where other hands have rested. The candlelight cooling in amber on the surface and making the grain of the wood look like slow rivers, while the smell of old parchment and the faint iron tang of ink settles in the hollow of your nose, and the scratch of your quill keeps time with the rain, so that every small motion is a rhythm and every breath is a measure of peace. You lift a glass-stoppered vial of ink and feel the cool weight in your palm, your thumb balancing on the shoulder of the bottle as you tilt it and pour a measured drop into the shallow inkwell, the scent of oak galls and gum arabic rising like a simple, honest perfume. And you stir with the tip of your quill, while the sound of feather on glass is small and clean, a discreet counterpoint to the rain and the distant chant, your hand learning the old arc of stirring, so that the ink darkens just so. The surface smoothing to a glossy skin, safe and warm. The world is quiet, your wrist turning slowly as if tracing the same letter over and over in the air. You set the nib to the prepared parchment and feel the fine grain under the quill, the tiny resistance and the coolness of the page as your hand moves in the careful repetition of forming letters, the scratch like a soft insect song in the quiet, the smell of vellum being warm and faintly sweet from the lime baths it once knew. And you copy the sentence one careful stroke at a time. Each curve and crossing of a T an act you have performed 100 times today, and will perform 100 times more. The repetition itself a balm. The world is quiet, safe, and warm. Your breathing matching the scrape, and the scrape matching the rain so that all things fall into a deliberate glacial order. You pause to mend a small flaw and feel the edge of the knife between your fingers, the blade cool and familiar, as you scrape away a tiny smudge with a measured, nearly imperceptible motion, the scent of scraped parchment lifting like dust. And the soft whisper of the knife on metal is another soft sound, stitched into the wooden tapestry, while your thumb rubs a spot of pumice to take the sheen from the surface, so the ink will sit, your hand making the same small motions you began with this afternoon. The light from the candle catching on the metal, and the flame for a moment making a small golden point, safe and warm. The world is quiet. You mix a gesso for the illuminations and feel its cool, chalky texture on the tip of your brush. The smell of lime and rabbit skin blew a dry, pastoral note under the richer slate, and you lay it in with the smallest, most repetitive strokes until the raised grounds are exactly as you wish. The tiny tapping of the brush on the board like a second heartbeat, while the other scribes around you turn pages and bend over their own desks. Their breathing and the soft shuffle of vellum. Communal hush that is almost like a chant. The rain on the slate accompanying it with a dull but constant certainty, safe and warm. The world is quiet. You lift a leaf of beaten gold with the tip of a gilder-esque brush and feel its fragile weight. So thin it trembles between your fingers. The sound of the gold is like a small, dry rustle, and you press it to the gessoed letter with the tip of your burnisher, the amber candlelight making the gold glow as if it remembers the sun, while the smell of beeswax from the candle reaches you, warm and faintly sweet. And your hand works the same careful motion until the gilding is flush and the brush wipes away the excess. A repetitive polishing that leaves behind a soft, warm shine and a whisper of time, safe and warm. The world is quiet. You look up occasionally at the stone arches, where the rain beads and runs in thin rivulets down the glass. The sound a slow, clear drum that steadies you. And you think of the bread bakers in the distant kitchen, whose rising dough sends a thin steam of warm, yeasty smell down the corridor into the scriptorium. The thought of that slow swelling of bread like another round of patient work. And you breathe in the mingled scents of yeast and ink and old leather until they are one slow, layered memory. Your fingers returning to the page and the quill finding its line as before, safe and warm. The world is quiet. You blot the last letter of the folio with a linen cloth and feel the small give of the fabric against wet ink, the cloth taking up the shine and leaving the surface matte, while the soft thud of pages being turned elsewhere in the room, and the distant tolling of a single bell mark the passage of the hour. And you close the cover of the completed quires, the leather cool and faintly oiled under your palm, the spine making a low, muffled sound. The smell of binding glue and dried animal glue rising like a quiet memory. And you set the bundle aside with hands that remember the same motions, safe and warm. The world is quiet. You rise and draw your cowl about your shoulders and feel the wool settle, its rough comfort against your cheek. And you walk the stone passage with your sandals whispering, and your breath a low cloud. The air colder now and smelling of wet slate and wood smoke, as you pass the cloister where the monks chant a slow roundel of Gregorian tones that echo against the arches and slip into every corner, the chant distant and steady as a tide. The rain on the roof growing fuller, and the bell marking one more hour in a voice that is deep and mellow, safe and warm. The world is quiet. You enter your simple cell and feel the narrow pallet of straw and the coarse weave of the woolen blanket as you lay aside your working tools. The inkwell cool on the wooden shelf where it sits like a small dark stone, the candle guttering and making its own small, crackling song as you draw the blanket up, and the candlelight throws the gold-leafed edges of your finished page into a soft, final gleam, while the air holds the layered smells of your day parchment, ink, damp stone, and the dry, sweet note of hay from your bed. And you listen to the rain on the eaves and the faint chant through the wall until your breath slows to match them, safe and warm. The world is quiet. You lie back and feel the slow, even rise and fall of your chest, the mattress pushing up and the blanket pressing a steady, known weight across your legs. And the rain on the slate becomes a steady, gentle hand on the roof. The chant a distant, rounded thread through the dark, the last of the candle flaring, and then softening to a memory of light while the smell of wax and ink recedes like a tide. And you let your eyes close with the sensation of page and feather and stone still at the tips of your senses. Imagining the quill resting, imagining the bread will continue to rise in the warmth of the kitchen without hurry, until sleep comes like a slow, inevitable turning of a page, safe and warm.